Hey guys, True Scott, Bulletproof Saws and BLUESAWS.com. Hope everybody's doing all right. I think we're on part 8 of this 460, and for what it's worth, and trying to think of where we left off. We had put the rear handle on. I didn't do the coil yet. I set it in there because I was kind of looking over what I wanted to do. I'm going to try to make this, I don't know if it'll be any quicker than the other videos, but I got to make it quicker because Big Mean Boss Lady and Little Mean Boss Lady are on their way home in the next 20 minutes, half hour, so I only got so much time. Obviously, Big Mean Boss Lady's my gal, and Little Mean Boss Lady's one of my granddaughters, so I'm going to have the two of them, and I might not get to do anything else today, depending on how it goes. If I could sneak away, maybe. So anyhow, before I started buttoning this up and I started messing with the muffler, I took one of our stainless steel 4446 mufflers, just 'cause they're kind of neat. I want to do another video on these because I have a couple things that I've noticed that I want to talk to you guys about. Pulled the screen out, pulled the side screen out. We're on the East Coast. This is pretty much a rainforest where there's very few times where it's so dry things are going to burn down, and when it does get a little brush fire, it's a little brush fire. It's not like what Jess deals with out there in Montana, where there's fires with helicopters dropping water and the whole state is covered in smoke. We don't get that in Pennsylvania. So what I did was I popped the hole in the side, and I did the side deflector. And I know on one of the other videos we have a discussion about the pipe, the front cover, kind of got into Husky versus steel, which I thought was a great point somebody made. Like, hey, the steel ones blow a big fat hole out the front. They seem to respond well. Whereas the Huskies, maybe they do better with the pipe. So I got to get that dyno. That's going to help out an awful lot. So I have a muffler ready. I am going to pressure test this again. I popped the block off plate back on the front. Don't know why I ever removed it. I shouldn't have, but I did. I did some muffler messing anyway, so I guess it was all right. And then I got my pressure test thing that I use. And again, a lot of times I use plates. Here's the thing on the 460s. I believe the 461s are like this, and I have to go look at a 462 to know. I have a crushed one up there for parts that I've never messed with, so I don't know anything about a 462. But the 461s, I had a fella contact me for one of our velocity stacks. We have the milled aluminum velocity stacks, and they'll fit on a 660, obviously a 366, because I run it on that all the time. And he said, well, it fit on the 461, and I know people use these rear handles on the 461, so I know that's the same. They have longer carb studs than the other saws. They're just significantly longer. And I'm like, I don't know. I know you can make it work, and you're probably going to need little pipes or something. Long story short, the guy was like, the kit was perfect. What I did was I took the couplers that I send with the kit, just because I like them better than the little nuts with the velocity stack. If you saw our velocity stack, you'd understand what I'm doing. He said I drilled them out, put them in as my pipe extensions, then I used the regular nuts. He says it worked perfect. He was totally happy, so that was good to know. And I guess I should update the listing that it'll fit the 460 and 461. And if that's what you're ordering, maybe I'll send an extra set of extensions. Anyhow, neither here nor there. So anyhow, carb studs are longer, so you need your little pipes to put on there, because you run out of threads. The carb studs aren't threaded all the way down, but the adapter is past where the threading is. So you get your little, alright, see, this is why you have multiple lengths of pipes. I have these long ones that are too long for this. They work better if I use the block off plate. And then I got shorter ones, so we'll just use the shorter ones. We will find our wonder nuts, put on the end here. And get that button down, and I didn't forget the carb ring. The carb ring's in there too. I was doinking with the carb a little bit. I did pull apart the carb and gave a look at the diaphragms, because I don't know why you'd have a good OEM carb, but an aftermarket carb on the saw. I think I mentioned this. The only thing I can think of is it probably had an air leak. That's probably how they blew it up. Wasn't tuning. They're frustrated with the carb. They're blaming the carb. It's not the carb, it's an air leak. So they swapped to the aftermarket carb. It probably, maybe it ran, and then the saw blew up. So let's see if we can get this button down. I have this on a real low setting, so I could just go and hit the clutch, and that should seal up. Problem with this snap-on driver, the bottom of it's so gosh darn small, the battery, that it doesn't like standing. And I even got, my buddy Manny got me the little thing on the end, and it's a magnetic thing, and it makes it a little bit bigger, but I'm on a piece of wood here, so it's not magnetic, but it is bigger and it stands better. Oh, vac tester. And the reason I do this, guys, is I'm super curious about the impulse line, where the impulse line, you know, goes onto the nipple, the intake boot. Make sure that I have that sealed up, because our original pressure test didn't account for any of that. So it's just one last pressure test. You know, it's only 2 pressure tests, leak down tests, but to me it makes sense to do, just to make sure in my mind. What I've also found, and a guy can make a strong argument here, that if you didn't do the second pressure test, as soon as you ran that saw, a minor air leak, maybe you wouldn't notice, but once you do a lot of the same models, you kind of notice it's different. That doesn't seem like it's adjusting out where I would think it would with an OEM carb and knowing the build. So I guess you could do it that way. You know, you could also do it with some carb cleaner, spraying it, you know, and just seeing if you got an air leak in those spots. But just do a leak down on the saw. I don't know how else to tell it to you. I don't want to tell you have to do these things. This is a tool you have to have. You have to, if you're going to work on saws, you have to have it. You could work around it. You could struggle around it. It's half-assed. Don't care. Slaughter me on it, guys, but don't buy any other tool besides this. If you only have enough money for one thing, get this. And I'm not going to sit here all day doing a leak down on this. I'm going to give it about a minute on vacuum, just because I don't anticipate, well, I shouldn't say that. It'll wind up, Murphy's Law, kick me in the ass, and it'll start leaking. And again, I'd know it as soon as I started it and ran it for 10 seconds. I had a Blue 44 a little while back, and I think I made a video on it. And Jess had sent it to me because he was frustrated. He's like, I'm not touching this thing. I don't care. You do it. And he says, it seems air leaky to me. I'm not even sure if he told me in the front end. He just said he had a problem, or if he told me it was air leaky. I just don't remember. And then I got it and ran it. It's air leaky. But I can see how a lot of people would miss that, especially if it's not a good size air leak. You don't notice it. It's just, the saw's running a little too zippy and things aren't going exactly like you know they should. When you see what right looks like in a model of saw, and this is how it should run, this is how it should tune, granted, you could change things and make it a little bit different, but you know how it's supposed to be, and you know the saws so well that immediately, I guarantee 9 out of 10 guys might not have picked up that air leak. I was real happy Jess did, because I work on saws a lot more than he gets to, and it's just nice. All right, I'm going to say that passed on vacuum. Let me do a quick pressure test. I know I shouldn't even have did this with you guys. It's not that interesting. You know, to fill up case volume, it just seems like I got to pump a heck of a lot to get a pressure on something, and I went a little high there. I'm up to 9. Which, I guess you can make an argument that if you go higher than 7, 8, 9, maybe it will show the leak a little bit faster. Maybe. don't know the science behind it. Well, if you hold here at 9 for, God, I don't know if I should pause you guys so you don't have to see this. Well, I'll talk to you for a minute. What I hope to get done today is we'll do the coil. Not that interesting. I'll go through it real quick. We'll throw on clutch, drum, carb. Be honest with you, we might even get to muffler and be just about done except for putting plastics back together, and that might bring this video to an end. Maybe I probably won't get to run it today, but depending on what Little Boss and Big Boss want from me. If I get to run it, make a video of it running and cutting, and maybe I could dig deep and find another saw to run with it just to put it in perspective on something else, which might be fun. We're still at 9, guys. I'm gonna say I'm confident enough it's not leaking. I inspected the impulse, I inspected the intake boot. I believe I'm good. But again, when I did the original vac test on, was it vacuum or prep? One of them, I left it for 2 hours and I lost a pound. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what I expect. All right, guys, let's rip this out of here. You guys think the video would be better if I paused you here, did the little busy work, and then came back to you where there was, you know, something worth seeing? I'm trying to figure out how to do it. My buddy Morgan McInnes over at Apple Lake and Saw Repair and I think he actually told me this before, it's probably the 5th time he told me, and he figures I'm senile, but told me about some video editing software, and he does pretty cool videos. He does cool work, but he does these videos where he splits the screen so you can have 2 saws going head to head on the screen, which I think that'll be a lot of fun to do. So I'm gonna try to figure that out. I might have to get a new cell phone. I have a, what is it, Google Pixel 6, so it's nothing new. I don't get the latest, greatest $1,200 phones. It's just not my thing. So I have that, and if I upgrade to an 8, get a little more capacity on it, it might give me a little more room to jack with videos on my phone. I have Adobe Premiere on a laptop, and I have a little bit of a clue how to use it. It's been a few years, but I'm not trying to get into all that. That's almost like another hobby or career. And I just don't need to do that. So if I could do it quick on my cell phone, I sure will. All right, that looked good. Rings in there. Let's see. Making sure I'm not forgetting anything. Put some of this stuff away. We will pop that front plate off when we go to put the muffler on. What were we doing? Coil. We got an OEM Japan-made coil. That's going back on. One of the things I'll tell you, when you do the rear handle, you make sure you fish through the wires. You got one wire with a, I was going to call it an O-ring, with a round connector, and the other's a spade connector. On the round connector, on that bolt, I always put a small washer on it if there's not one. The reason being is the fluting on the bottom of the screws, the steel screws that are supposed to be like a lock mechanism, will grab that connector, and as you tighten it, you could hold it back with your fingers, but that wire and connector is not that strong, and you could bend it because that bolt will get so much grip on there, it'll start twisting it into the case. And if you don't pay attention, it's real easy to snap off. I find that the washer makes it not grip that way, which probably defeats the purpose in some way, but it protects that connector. I do it. You can tell me I'm wrong. I won't argue with you, but it works well for me. So I put one screw in here. The other thing I do with flywheels or with coils, I use the business card. This one was 11.5, 12 thou. I've gone 10 thou. I've gone as high as 14 thou. One of the things, and I can't prove this out, this is tribal knowledge I have somehow, and again, point me out if I'm wrong. As you put more gap between your flywheel and your coil, you're retarding timing, and the closer it is, it's more advanced. So without changing where the flywheel is on the crank, granted, you have to generate a spark, so there's only so far you could go out, so you're not going to really retard it, but 12th out seems good for me in coil gap. I don't know how else to say it. Now I've been digging through here like a little pack rat, and I got everything all goofed up. I put one screw into that coil, and I didn't even put it in all the way. Put the card in, and I figured I'd better do this on video. Not that it's interesting. I was also working on, I got 72-inch chainsaw mills that we're coming out with, just because we get a lot of questions on it. And I've been running a 72-inch chainsaw mill for years, so we redesigned some things on it. Listen, we're not making all the piece parts on it. We're kind of putting it together as an alternative to spending, you know, $600-700 on one. And having done so much chainsaw milling for so long, there's a couple little things that we do that I think somebody who didn't chainsaw mill wouldn't have thought of. It's nothing revolutionary, guys, but, you know, heavier rails so you eliminate any flex in the chainsaw mill. Just little things like that. And I've done where I have the toolless adjustments. My opinion is a little bit out on that. Just, I don't mind tightening a nut that I know is tight, whereas the toolless ones seem like they could vibrate loose. I had it happen to me once, but I also think I didn't really lock it into place, so it was probably my own fault. I have this set pretty low, and then I'll tighten these with my hand. Got my business card in there. I spun the magnets. The magnets suck the coil to the business card to the flywheel. Now here's where I'm going to hold that wire as I tighten it with that washer on it. See, and that barely spun at all. Matter of fact, that spun so little it's up against the spade connector. And now I got 1/4 of an inch that I could tighten down on, and if it spins, it's not going to hit the wall and break or get bent or get ruined. Now it's moving again, so now I need something to stick in there while I turn the screwdriver to keep it from spinning too much. And I don't want to break those. It's easy enough to put a new connector on the end of a wire, but I don't want to have to do it. My big goofy hands, I can't get in there, so I can't even put on a spade connector in here half the time. So you'll see me use tools quite often to do things like this. Grab screws, and if I was as good with chopsticks as I was with a pair of needle nose, that'd be something. And then all I do is I spin the flywheel to get the card out. Handy dandy BLUESAWS card, I hope you have them. The discount codes on them, guys, so if you never looked at them and you've been ordering, you might. Save you a couple bucks there, so we're good on that. Where did I say we're going next? Mr. Clutch and worm gear. Still have our OEM worm gear. Absolutely no reason to change that. Get Mr. Worm Gear back in. You got to have your worm gear washer, clutch washer. I don't know what you'd call this one. I'll have to look in the IPL what they call it. It goes down. I don't know how else to say. You have to pay attention. This one's actually labeled top. It's an OEM one. Some of the aftermarket ones are also, but I've seen guys, if you put it on the wrong way, it will get hung up in the clutch and cause you some problem. Not disaster problems, but you'd be like, hey, something's not right, and that's what it is. Spinning the clutch on, no big deal. OEM clutch, I kind of was flexing this before to check the springs. It's in really good shape. I almost think that this saw might have been rebuilt at some point. I don't know that, but just some things on it seemed nicer than other things, and they all seem like they should have wore at the same rate. Clutch is obviously reverse threaded, so you spin it on lefty tighty. And again, we are going to do as I say, not as I do, because we're going to hit it with the impact like bad guys. And again, I don't hammer on these either. And when I first start the saw, after I choke it, blips, go on high idle, I usually hit the chain brake. So when it comes on in high idle, the chain brake's already on. I'll knock the chain brake off, let it run for a second. My point being is that when you have the chain brake on and you hit the throttle, it will tighten up the clutch for you. So if you have a loose clutch, and I've gotten into situations where for whatever reason the clutch was loose and you can't get things off of there, if you start the saw with the chain brake on and hit the throttle, it'll tighten it right back down for you. So it's my habit to have a chain brake a lot, and you'll see me blip saws all the time, and it's just that tightening up the clutch thing. The other thing I'm going to tell you guys, on the aftermarket clutches, not all of them, but a lot of them, and I couldn't tell you which ones do it and which ones don't. I have certain impacts. This might, no, it was the other DeWalt that vibrate at a certain frequency. This is going to sound wacky. They vibrate at a certain frequency. They'll break off the little nibs inside of the clutch, like the vibration frequency breaks them off, and maybe you could still use those clutches. I never personally have. I'll show you on another clutch actually what I'm talking about with a thing. Here's a clutch that's, maybe that one's a better one to show you with. Here, well, let's see if I can show you this on video. So what I'm talking about is, for some reason, that impact, you will have this clutch and you'll be buzzing it on, and I realize I have you the back side, but if you could see here, let me hit focus. Right here, that'll break off, that might break off, that might break off. And that clutch, I'm not going to say it's still usable. I never have. You might get away with it, you might not. I never tried it to know. But for some reason, that vibration will just shatter those. I don't see it on the OEM clutches. You would hope not. But I think they're made with that, I believe. I don't think they're cast. I think they're made out of that sintered. And I think it has something to do with that. And they all don't do it. It's batch manufacturer dependent. And I couldn't tell you which ones are going to do it to you and which ones aren't. And it just might be that one impact I have has a funny resonance on its ugga-duggas. So that's a weird kind of thing, guys, I know. What am I forgetting here? Am I forgetting anything? I don't think so. Did I put the worm gear in? Yeah, I put the worm gear in. We're good on that. I had a brand new clutch bearing. Where did I put it? There it is. I always use the highway clutch bearings. I haven't used the Farmer Tech ones in a while, but I have Farmer Tech saws with them in it that I've been running for years. So, listen, I'd like to sell you highway bearings just to sell them to you, but I can't. I've always used them because I have good luck with them, but I can't tell you that the Farmer Tech ones are bad, but this is a highway one just the same. And I will grease it. Just out of good practice. I thought the OEM one looked decent, but I figured we'd put a new one in. Maybe I'll send that OEM one back with him. He'd keep it in a little plastic baggie in case he needed it one day in a pinch. And if he's got a toolbox with him, just keep your little extra piece parts in there, because it still looks good, but I'd rather him go with a new one right off. Where's my rags? OEM clutch. Look for our little nib on our worm. Make sure our brake's off. I was playing with that earlier. Hitting it back and forth. We're in. We probably have an E-clip. Somewhere I found an E-clip. What about a washer? You guys see me say it before. The heavier, I don't like the thin metal, these ones. Here, I'll zoom you in. Let's see if I can do this too. Oh boy. I like the one on the right. If it's black or silver, I don't care. I don't like the thin stamped metal ones on the left. On the Husky clones, the thin metal ones are fine. I have no problem with them on those. On the steel clones, I don't love these. This feels heavier, actually. Maybe they changed the metal on them, but I always upgrade to the heavier metal ones. I prefer them. Oh, we need a Mr. Sprocket. This might not have had a sprocket on it when it came in, because I don't see one here and I hadn't seen one here. And I'm almost certain it didn't have one on it when it came in. Well, let me see if I got one handy. Do I have one? Nope, small spline. Small spline, aren't you? Yeah, you are small spline. What do we got? Oh, I could throw an 8-pin on it. 404s. All right, guys, hold on a second. Let me go find a sprocket. I'm going to pause you real quick. Okay, fellas, I probably didn't even have to pause you there. 3/8 7-pin I'm putting on it. And, you know, we play with 8-pins occasionally. There's an 8-pin there. That's what might have been on it. Anyhow, we do play with 8-pins. Even on some of our fastest, most powerful saws, you know, maybe for racing, okay, maybe that's fun, or doing some different things, but for day-to-day use, I still prefer the 7s on most saws. It's not just that it gives it more torque. I just overall like the feel of a 7-pin. You know, you want to play around with an 8-pin, what's a sprocket cost? Whole, you know, not $5, whatever it is. They're dirt cheap, so I mean, if you want to play around, but for day-to-day, I don't love them. That's done. I'm going to be putting on a muffler, which I could do with you guys, but I think I'm going to pause this just in case the bosses come home. I can do the carb while we're talking. Oh, there might be something there that's interesting. Maybe let me pause you and bring you in closer. Maybe that's a better way to do things. Okay, fellas. Yes, I'm aware of my super disgusting bench. It's all getting cleaned once this guy's gone. This became even worse of a catch-all as wrong carb. Why did I grab that one? That was the aftermarket one he had on there, which maybe it ran, maybe it didn't. All right, let's throw our little Walbro on here. Always make sure you have that ring in there, guys. Got this to get into its spot with my fat fingers. That looks better. I always make sure I have the, it's easy to hit that funny, and it doesn't matter. You can reseat it, but I'm also not trying to wallow that hole out. So I try to be careful as I'm seating carbs. I think when I did the limiters, I probably set this to 1-in-1. I hope I set it to 1-in-1. I don't remember, but it's not that big of a deal for me to change it. I didn't do a good job cleaning this thing. I'll tell you that right now. Carb grommet. Let's see what we got here. Boy, we are all sorts of buggered up. There we go. Throw this guy on. What I am going to tell you, this stupid little tin piece, which, whatever, I'm not going to say it's the most important piece. I hate the aftermarket ones. The OEM one, I'm not saying it's even a ton thicker. At least they drill the holes out to the proper side, and you don't got to fight it over the threaded parts of the screw. Every single aftermarket one listen, they work. It's a little whatever piece. It's not, you know, anything earth-shattering. But Jesus, those aftermarket ones give me fits. I popped out of there when I was playing. Now I can't see what I'm doing, and I'm sure you can see my head. Count my 5 hairs. Come on, there you go. Come on, do what I need you to do. Boy, you are being ignorant. Pop you back in. Grab you, pull the trigger, pop that in there. Usually I'll take a little screwdriver. I might be able to get these needle nose in there. Nope. Too big. Pop you down into lay trigger. Oh, that probably didn't help either, having that. Let's see what we got. All right, let's put you where you're supposed to be. Little rubber grommet popped out, fits in perfect. Let's see. Choke. High idle. Do we hear a click? Excellent. And again, they've improved this trigger trigger mechanism quite a bit from a couple years ago. And I'm telling you, it was probably 2 years ago and they were still trash. Maybe it was 3, but it wasn't that long ago. With the plug, I can never get this decomp grommet to stay. So we're going to wind up losing that. What else do we have? I have another box with parts. All we're going to be doing is button up some plastics on here, putting our AV fillers in, chain tensioner, and we are, once I put the muffler on, done. I'm going to pause you. All right, guys. I think we're done enough that it's going to get even more boring if I keep going on with this. Nothing is jumping out at me that I forgot. I think we're in pretty decent shape, and I'm just going to button up the piece parts on this, and hopefully the next video you see is it running, unless something goes tragically wrong, and if it starts off when we're at the bench, you're going to know that I'm not happy. So I think that's about it. Has the OEM handlebar too, and I doctored up the paint on that too just to make it look nice. I think that's it for today, guys. We got lucky. The bosses didn't make it home, and I'll try to get a little more done and call it a wrap. Thanks for watching, guys. True Grit Scott, Bulletproof Saws, and BLUESAWS.com. Thanks for watching again.